The truth is, toxic people lose their grip on your life the moment you master one powerful thing: indifference. When you stop feeding them with your energy, your reactions, and your emotions, they simply fade away. Toxic individuals thrive on your attention, whether it's anger, defense, or even constant explanations. They want to control your peace, they want to live rent-free in your mind, and they want to manipulate your emotions. But once you train yourself to detach emotionally and stop reacting, you cut off their supply. They vanish because without your energy, they have nothing to feed on. Toxic people are like parasites. They cannot survive on their own because their energy is not self-sustaining. Instead, they feed on the energy of others. Their words, their actions, their manipulation, and their drama are not just random behaviors. They are strategies designed to provoke a reaction. Every time you get angry, defend yourself, explain excessively, or argue back, you are giving them the very thing they crave: your energy. It doesn't matter whether your reaction is positive or negative. As long as it's charged with emotion, it fuels their power over you. Think about it: a person who constantly criticizes you feels satisfied when you become defensive. A person who always plays the victim feels validated when you rush to rescue them. A manipulator feels victorious when you break down and doubt yourself. Your reactions are like oxygen to their fire. Without them, they cannot sustain their control. Now, imagine a toxic person trying to insult you, provoke you, or guilt trip you. And instead of reacting, you simply remain calm. You do not argue, you do not defend, you do not allow your emotions to be stirred. At first, they may push harder because they are desperate for a reaction, but when they consistently hit a wall of indifference, they grow frustrated. Slowly, they realize that their tricks no longer work on you, and that's when their power begins to crumble. Cutting off this supply doesn't mean you need to physically distance yourself immediately. Although that may eventually happen, it means you no longer engage in the game they are trying to play. You refuse to be manipulated into an emotional roller coaster. You refuse to let them dictate the tone of your day or the state of your inner peace. You take control by giving them nothing to feed on. This is not easy at first. Toxic people are often skilled at finding your weak spots. They know what words trigger you, what topics make you defensive, and what tactics make you feel guilty. But the more you practice emotional self-control, the stronger you become. Instead of reacting, you pause. Instead of defending, you observe. Instead of explaining yourself endlessly, you stand firm in your silence, and that silence is louder than any argument you could ever make. The truth is, toxic people cannot survive in environments where they are starved of attention. They thrive in drama, conflict, and chaos. If you deny them that space, they eventually leave to find someone else who will give it to them. That's why many people notice that when they stop feeding toxic relationships, those relationships naturally fade away. It's not because the toxic person suddenly changed. It's because without your reactions, they no longer have control over you. Cutting off their supply also means reclaiming your own energy. Instead of pouring it into endless arguments, guilt, or stress, you redirect it towards your growth, your peace, and your happiness. You stop wasting your mental and emotional resources on people who drain you, and you invest them in people and activities that uplift you. That is where real power lies, not in changing the toxic person, but in changing how you respond to them. So the next time a toxic person tries to provoke you, remember this: your silence, your calmness, and your refusal to engage are not signs of weakness. They are signs of strength. By cutting off their supply, you make them powerless. And the more powerless they become, the quicker they vanish from your life. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with toxic individuals is believing that confrontation will solve the problem. They think if they explain themselves enough, prove their innocence, or fight back harder, the toxic person will change or back off. But the truth is, confrontation rarely works with people who thrive on manipulation and chaos. Why? Because confrontation still gives them what they crave: your energy. It keeps you entangled in their web, and instead of finding peace, you find yourself stuck in an endless cycle of drama. Indifference, on the other hand, is a game changer. It is not passive, it is powerful. Indifference means you refuse to let their actions disturb your emotional state. You no longer allow their words to control how you feel, and you no longer react to their attempts to bait you. While confrontation keeps the toxic bond alive, indifference weakens it until it crumbles. Silence is one of the strongest weapons you can use against toxicity. Toxic people feed on responses, whether it's anger, defense, or tears. When you remain silent, they are left with nothing. Silence communicates a message louder than words. You no longer have power over me. This doesn't mean you avoid important conversations when necessary, but when it comes to their games, manipulation, or unnecessary drama, silence dismantles their control piece by piece. Calmness works the same way. Imagine a toxic person trying to provoke you with insults or guilt trips. If you respond with equal intensity, anger, shouting, or emotional breakdown, you've given them exactly what they wanted. But if you respond with calmness, if your tone remains steady and your body language relaxed, it frustrates them. They can no longer pull you into their chaos. Over time, they will see that no matter how hard they try, they cannot shake your inner peace. And that peace becomes your shield. The beauty of indifference is that it places the power back in your hands. You cannot control how toxic people behave, but you can control how you respond. And when you choose indifference over confrontation, you remove the fuel that keeps their behavior alive. It's like trying to light a fire with no wood. It simply cannot burn. Some people confuse indifference with weakness or avoidance, but in reality, it requires immense strength. It is far easier to lash out in anger or to argue endlessly than it is to remain calm and unaffected. Indifference demands discipline. It demands emotional maturity. It demands that you value your peace over winning an argument. But the reward is worth it because every time you choose indifference, you reclaim a little more of your freedom. Over time, toxic people cannot stand being in environments where they are powerless. If they cannot get a reaction from you, they will move on to someone else who will give them that energy. And without you even forcing them out, they begin to vanish naturally. You don't have to push them away. Your indifference does the work for you. So the next time you feel the urge to confront, argue, or defend yourself against a toxic person, pause and remember this. Confrontation keeps you trapped, but indifference sets you free. Silence is not empty, it is full of power. Calmness is not weakness, it is strength under control. And together, silence and calmness destroy the grip that toxic people have on your life. One of the greatest traps toxic people set for us is the temptation to prove ourselves. When someone falsely accuses us, criticizes us unfairly, or twists our words, our natural instinct is to jump in and defend ourselves. We want to explain, clarify, and prove that we are right. But with toxic people, this instinct backfires. The more you try to prove your point, the more energy you give them. The more you argue, the more you validate their control over your emotions. And in the end, even if you are right, you lose something far more valuable, your peace. Peace is priceless. It is the foundation of your emotional, mental, and even physical health. Without peace, even the smallest situations feel overwhelming. Toxic people know this, which is why they try to drag you into conflict. Their goal is not truth, it's control. Their mission is not resolution, it's chaos. And every time you try to prove your point, you unknowingly hand them the power to disturb your inner calm. Think about it. Have you ever argued with a toxic person and walked away feeling lighter, calmer, and happier? Probably not. More often you walk away drained, frustrated, and replaying the argument in your head. That is exactly the outcome they wanted. They don't care about the truth, they care about the drama, which means the best way to win is not to prove your point, it's to protect your peace. Protecting your peace requires a shift in perspective. You have to recognize that your peace is more valuable than being right. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every insult is worth responding to. Not every false accusation is worth correcting. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence says, I refuse to sacrifice my inner calm just to engage with nonsense. This doesn't mean you should never stand up for yourself. There are times when speaking up is necessary, especially in professional, legal, or boundary-setting situations. But when it comes to toxic people who thrive on endless arguments, protecting your peace means choosing wisely which battles to fight and which ones to walk away from. Walking away doesn't mean they won. It means you won because you chose yourself over chaos. Another powerful aspect of protecting your peace is learning emotional detachment. Toxic people often say or do things specifically designed to trigger you. They know what buttons to press. But when you build the ability to detach emotionally, their words lose their sting. You stop seeing their attacks as a reflection of your worth and start seeing them for what they are: desperate attempts to control. With that perspective, you can walk away without guilt, without anger, and without the need to prove anything. Here's the truth: peace is a magnet for growth, happiness, and success. When you protect your peace, you have more energy to focus on your goals. You have more clarity to make better decisions. You have more strength to nurture healthy relationships. But when you constantly give away your peace by engaging in toxic arguments, you drain yourself and block your own progress. So the next time a toxic person tries to pull you into an argument, stop and ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to be at peace? More often than not, the answer is peace. And in choosing peace, you reclaim control over your life. Remember, your energy is sacred. Protecting it is not selfish. It is necessary, because in the end, protecting your peace is not about them, it's about you. And when you choose peace over proving your point, toxic people lose their power and you gain your freedom. Toxic people survive on emotional connection, not the healthy, uplifting kind, but the draining and manipulative one. They thrive when they can make you angry, guilty, insecure, or defensive. In other words, their control over you is only as strong as your emotional attachment to them. The more you care about their opinion, the more you need their approval, or the more you react to their negativity, the more power they hold over you. But the moment you learn emotional detachment, that invisible chain begins to break and toxic people naturally drift out of your life. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about people altogether. It doesn't make you cold, unkind, or indifferent to those you love. Instead, it means you stop allowing toxic people to control your emotions. It's the ability to say, I see your behavior, but I will not let it disturb my inner peace. It's the art of stepping back emotionally so their chaos no longer has a grip on your heart or mind. Think of it like this. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a storm. The wind is wild, the rain is heavy, and the thunder is deafening. If you're outside, you're soaked, shaken, and overwhelmed. But if you're inside a house, watching the storm through the window, it can no longer touch you. The storm is still there, but you are detached from its impact. That is what emotional detachment feels like when dealing with toxic people. You see the storm, but it doesn't drown you anymore. One of the most powerful tools of emotional detachment is awareness. Toxic people often manipulate through guilt, shame, or fear. But when you learn to see their tactics clearly, you stop taking them personally. You realize their behavior says more about them than it does about you. When you stop internalizing their attacks, their ability to wound you disappears. Awareness creates emotional distance, and distance creates freedom. Another key aspect of detachment is boundaries. Emotional detachment is not just about how you feel, but also about what you allow. It's about saying, not without guilt, refusing to engage in unnecessary arguments, and limiting your time and energy with those who drain you. Boundaries are like invisible fences. They signal where your emotional space begins and ends. Toxic people may test those fences, but if you stay firm, they eventually learn that they cannot cross. What's interesting is that when you master detachment, you don't need to chase toxic people out of your life. They will often leave on their own. Why? Because without your emotional reactions, you no longer serve their purpose. You no longer provide the drama, the energy, or the attention they crave. To them, you become boring. And that's the best compliment you can get from a toxic person, because it means you've cut off their supply. This doesn't happen overnight. Emotional detachment is a practice. At first, you might still feel the sting of their words or the pull of their manipulation. But every time you choose to step back instead of react, you build strength. Every time you pause instead of argue, you reclaim your power. And slowly, the emotional grip they had on you loosens until it vanishes. The beauty of emotional detachment is that it doesn't just push toxic people away. It pulls peace closer to you. You stop living on edge, constantly bracing for the next conflict. Instead, you live with calmness, clarity, and control. You're no longer tossed around by their storms. You are anchored in your own strength. So remember, toxic people can only hurt you if you let them inside your emotions. The moment you detach, you create a wall they cannot climb, and that natural distance will do the work for you. Toxic people fade and peace takes their place. In life, your energy is your most valuable currency. Every thought you entertain, every emotion you express, every hour you spend, it all requires energy. Yet most people don't realize how precious this resource is. They spend it carelessly, especially on toxic individuals who drain them dry. The truth is, your focus and energy are like gold, rare, powerful, and capable of building great wealth in your life. But just like gold, if you let the wrong people take it, you'll be left with nothing. Toxic people are energy thieves. They know how to demand attention, stir up conflict, and pull you into emotional battles that leave you drained. The more you give them, the weaker you feel. And the weaker you feel, the harder it becomes to focus on your goals, your growth, and your happiness. That's why protecting your energy is not just a matter of emotional health, it's a matter of survival. Think about how gold is guarded. No one leaves gold lying around carelessly open for anyone to take. It's locked in vaults, protected by layers of security, because it has immense value. Your energy deserves the same protection. Not everyone should have access to your time, attention, or emotional space. Only those who uplift you, support you, and help you grow should be allowed to share in that gold. Everyone else, especially the toxic, should be kept at a safe distance. When you give your energy to toxic people, you invest in loss. They will never give you a return on that investment. Instead, they leave you empty, frustrated, and doubting yourself. But when you give your energy to positive pursuits, your dreams, your passions, your health, and the people who truly care for you, you create abundance. Your energy multiplies, your peace deepens, and your life expands. The difference between the two outcomes lies entirely in where you direct your focus. One of the greatest lessons in life is learning that not everyone deserves a response, not every battle deserves your fight, and not every person deserves a seat at your table. Your attention is a form of power. When you focus on toxic people, you fuel their control, but when you withdraw your focus, they starve, they lose significance, and slowly they vanish. Guarding your energy also means becoming intentional about your choices. Ask yourself daily, where am I investing my focus? Who am I giving my time to? What thoughts am I feeding? If the answers point to negativity, conflict, or toxicity, then you know you're wasting your gold. Redirect it. Choose to spend it on growth instead of drama, on peace instead of arguments, on love instead of fear. The more you treat your energy like gold, the more valuable it becomes. You begin to respect your own boundaries. You learn to say no without guilt. You stop chasing validation from people who never cared about you in the first place. And in doing so, you create space for people and opportunities that truly enrich your life. Toxic people can sense when you've reclaimed your energy. At first, they may resist. They may push harder, manipulate stronger, or try to guilt you into giving them access again. But if you stay firm, if you hold your gold close and refuse to hand it out freely, they will eventually move on, because without your energy, they have nothing. So remember this, your focus and energy are not infinite. Every drop you spend shapes your future. Guard it like gold because it is gold, and when you choose wisely who deserves it, you'll find that toxic people naturally fall away, while peace, success, and happiness flow into your life. When it comes to dealing with toxic people, many of us think the solution is to confront them directly, cut ties abruptly, or forcefully push them out of our lives. While there are times when clear separation is necessary, in most cases, toxic people don't truly leave because of what you do externally. They leave because of what changes inside you. They leave when they realize their tricks no longer work, their manipulation no longer stings, and their drama no longer hooks you. In other words, they vanish when you stop playing their game. Toxic individuals operate by rules they've carefully crafted. They provoke to get a reaction. They guilt to gain compliance. They lie to create confusion. And they twist reality to make you doubt yourself. But the game only continues if you participate. The moment you refuse to step onto their playing field, the game collapses. It's like trying to play chess alone. You cannot win if the other person won't move their pieces. At first, they may resist. They may try harder to bait you, intensify their manipulation, or even play the victim to pull you back in. This is because they sense their control slipping. But if you remain firm, calm, indifferent, and unshaken, they eventually realize that you are no longer a willing participant. And when the game stops being fun for them, they pack up and leave. This process is subtle but powerful. It shifts the focus from trying to control the toxic person, which is impossible, to controlling yourself, which is fully in your hands. You can't change how they behave, but you can change whether or not you engage. The less you engage, the weaker the bond becomes. And without effort, you'll notice the distance growing until they fade completely. One of the hardest lessons to accept is that you don't owe toxic people an explanation. You don't need to justify your boundaries, argue your perspective, or prove your worth. In fact, the more you explain, the more material you give them to twist against you. By withdrawing from their game, you communicate something much more powerful than words. I will no longer play. That silence, that detachment is what drives them away. Consider this: every toxic relationship is like a tug of war. They pull with manipulation and you pull with resistance. The rope stays tight because both sides are engaged. But the moment you drop your end of the rope, the game ends. You don't need to pull harder to win. You win simply by refusing to play. What's beautiful about this approach is that it leaves you in control of your peace. Instead of wasting energy trying to fix, confront, or push someone out of your life, you simply stop giving them the reactions they need. You free yourself without needing a dramatic exit. Over time, toxic people either adjust their behavior because it no longer works on you, or they drift away in search of someone else who will play their game. Either way, you win. This truth is liberating because it means you don't have to fight battles that drain you. You don't have to constantly prove yourself or argue endlessly. All you have to do is decide, I will no longer engage in toxic games. That decision alone creates a shift so powerful that the toxic person eventually removes themselves. So remember this: you don't need to force toxic people out. You just need to stop playing. When you no longer respond to their manipulation, when you no longer feed their drama, when you no longer give them the power of your emotions, they have no choice but to leave. They don't walk away because you pushed. They walk away because you refuse to play. And in that refusal, you reclaim your peace, your power, and your freedom.